Most people think probiotics are just for digestion, gut health, but specific bacteria in your gut can have a powerful effect on the rest of your body, on your metabolism, on your immune system, and even on how your brain functions. And here's the thing, okay, not all probiotics can do this. Not all probiotics are the same. You ever walk into a pharmacy and you see that massive wall of probiotics and it is genuinely hard to know what to choose? I want to talk about 3 specific healthy bacteria that you can actually get as probiotics today. There are roughly 39 trillion bacteria living inside you. 3 of them are standouts, and I want to walk you through them because they've been studied in humans and they've shown real beneficial effects. This isn't a nice to have. This could be a must-have for your health and even your longevity. Let's start by talking a little bit about bacteria, because when I went to medical school, I was taught that bacteria are bad because bacteria cause disease. Well, it turns out that most of the bacteria we encounter in our lives are actually beneficial, and these bacteria are partly responsible for our health in the first place. More than a century ago, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist named Elie Metchnikoff observed that people who ate fermented foods, things like yogurt, specifically he was looking at Bulgarian monks, who seemed to get really old and really healthy all at the same time. They lived longer, healthier lives. He proposed that the reason they were able to live longer and healthier is because they were eating beneficial bacteria in their yogurt, and that was responsible for their longevity. So that is a little bit of history, and it goes way back. But here's where it gets really interesting. Modern science gives us an explanation of what might actually be going on, because we can now identify specific strains among those 39 trillion bacteria that live in your gut. And honestly, we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We're only beginning to identify the specific strains that can be genuinely beneficial, and once we know these strains, we can grow them up in the lab, we can study them, and we can also study their effects in humans, particularly when you make them into probiotics, and that is really important. This is an entirely new frontier of modern medical research, the study of the microbiome. Now from all of this, we're learning something really important, which is that not all probiotics are created equal. You ever go to a drugstore or a health food store and you look at that huge wall of probiotics? It is really hard to know what to choose, because they're all different. The strains, the dose, how it's actually manufactured, okay, and whether it's been studied in humans. These are all factors that are incredibly important to consider when you're trying to identify a probiotic that you actually want to put inside your body. Does it have a meaningful effect, or is it just marketing? And just like with any product you want to put inside your body, quality matters. You want to know the manufacturer. Does the company making this probiotic have a good reputation? Are they transparent about how they actually produce it? Have they ever had a warning issued to them by the FDA? These things matter for safety. And then knowing the bacteria, knowing the quality of the manufacturer, you want to know, does it actually work? Is there any clinical evidence that it works? This is what I always go for. I look for the human evidence. Alright, so let's take a look at 3 specific bacteria with benefits that I'm going to call out today. Are you ready? Let's go. The first bacteria that you can get as a probiotic is called Akkermansia. You may have heard me talk about this one before. The full name of the bacteria is Akkermansia muciniphila. Now this is a healthy bacteria that naturally grows inside your gut, your lower gut, okay? And it is a pretty newly discovered bacteria. Honestly, scientists only discovered it in 2004. Which means it's a recent breakthrough, and we're still learning what this specific healthy bacteria does. But here's what we already know. Akkermansia lives in your colon, that's the lower part of your gut, and it lives right alongside the lining of your intestines, where it feeds on a normal healthy layer of mucus that your gut produces. Now why does your gut produce mucus in the first place? You want food and digested stool to slide smoothly down through your gut, so there's normally mucus there. Akkermansia lives there and feeds on this mucus. Now what does that mucus do? The mucus actually protects the barrier of your gut lining, and this is really important. When the bacteria eat the mucus, it's a signal for your gut to make more mucus. More mucus means more protection for the gut barrier. So this is one of the many roles of Akkermansia. It helps to protect your gut barrier. Now why is the gut barrier so important? Think about it this way. The gut is essentially like a garden hose, okay? It's a tube, and inside that tube is all of your digested food that is ultimately going to turn into stool. Now imagine a garden hose. Whatever water you put through it is going to come out the other end, just like our gut does. But imagine if the lining of that garden hose wasn't intact. Imagine you had a leaky garden hose. You take a nail and you puncture a bunch of holes in it. Now what happens when you put fluid through? Stuff leaks out. Same deal with the gut. If you have leaky gut, the cells that are keeping the integrity of the lining of your gut actually loosen up, you get little holes, and what happens? Stuff leaks out. When stuff leaks out of your gut, particularly your lower gut, that's digested food on its way to becoming stool. That is really bad, because it leaks out into the cavity of your body called the abdomen, and that causes inflammation. So leaky gut, which is very uncomfortable and many people experience this, is a really terrible thing that sets up for chronic inflammation throughout your entire body. So Akkermansia, one of the most important things it does, it eats the mucus your gut produces. The gut responds by making more mucus, which protects the gut lining. No gut leakage means lower inflammation. The other thing Akkermansia does is it actually communicates with your immune system. 70% of your immune system actually lives inside the wall of your gut, inside that garden hose. So in addition to helping to keep the gut sealed tight, Akkermansia helps to support and activate your immune system. And this is turning out to be very important in the fight against cancer, because your immune system plays a pivotal role in keeping you healthy when you don't have cancer. It's actually conducting surveillance, patrolling your body like a cop on a beat in a quiet neighborhood, looking for any signs of trouble. And trouble in this case would be cancer cells, microscopic cancer cells that might be growing and lurking around. Akkermansia talks to your immune system and helps it conduct that surveillance, looking for the bad guys. And by the way, when your immune system actually needs to ramp up against cancer, Akkermansia plays an important role. But first, can you actually grow your own Akkermansia? The answer is yes. Akkermansia thrives when you eat certain foods that contain polyphenols called allogotannins. These allogotannins, you find them in foods like pomegranates, Concord grapes, cranberries, and walnuts, for example. Food is medicine. These allogotannins help prompt your gut to secrete more mucus, which the Akkermansia eats, which then stimulates more mucus, which protects the gut and feeds more Akkermansia. And basically, this is one way you can grow your own Akkermansia. You can eat foods that will support it. Now, how did Akkermansia really enter the limelight? It's basically from cancer researchers, and the research on Akkermansia and cancer is literally jaw-dropping. In fact, when I heard it, my jaw dropped. One of the world's leading researchers on this, Dr. Lawrence Zipvogel, who works in Paris at the Institut Gustave Roussy, was studying cancer patients being treated with immunotherapy. This is not chemo. These are cancer treatments that rely on your own immune system, that activate your immune system to go after the cancer. So in a way, it's you treating you. It's kind of the most natural way to defend and treat cancer. And what she found is that those cancer patients who had higher levels of Akkermansia in their gut were more likely to respond to treatment. And those who didn't have any Akkermansia were unlikely to respond. This is not nice to have. This could be a must-have. This could be the difference between life and death. The specific immunotherapies that have been studied are called immune checkpoint inhibitors. It's a class of immunotherapy. I will do a separate video about immunotherapies at some point. But again, Akkermansia is a critical gut bacteria that helps our body, helps our immune system ramp itself up, so that when you get immunotherapy, specifically checkpoint inhibitors, it helps your immune system go after the cancer. We're not done yet with Akkermansia. Akkermansia also affects your metabolism in a beneficial way. It produces short-chain fatty acids called propionate. That's one of the short-chain fatty acids, also called SCFAs. It produces this metabolite, and guess what that gets converted into? Another metabolite called butyrate, and butyrate is really important. Butyrate in your gut, which is made from propionate, which is made by Akkermansia, stimulates your body's own GLP-1. Now you've heard of GLP-1. It's a hormone that regulates appetite, helps with natural weight loss, and also helps your blood sugars normalize. So Akkermansia can actually help your body produce its own natural GLP-1. Same pathway that is targeted by medications like Ozempic and Wegovy, the GLP-1 agonists, but your body can activate this pathway all on its own, not the same way or the same potency as a drug, but Akkermansia does the job naturally. Food is medicine, so I want to remind you. You can eat these foods, pomegranates, Concord grapes, dried cranberries. I say dried cranberries because whole fresh cranberries are really tart. You're probably not going to want to eat them unless you add a ton of sugar, and I do not recommend that. But dried cranberries, easy to eat. And then you get the dietary fiber as well, and walnuts, great ways to grow your Akkermansia. But you can also get Akkermansia through a probiotic, because recently, manufacturers like Pendulum have found a way to grow this very difficult to cultivate healthy gut bacteria and put it into a probiotic pill. I actually take it myself, but I also eat the foods to amplify things. Most people don't realize how specific the microbiome really is, and how much it can influence your metabolism, your immune defenses, your cancer defenses, and even your brain function. So if you want to understand how to use the science, stay with me, because this is what I break down here. How gut bacteria and food as medicine can be useful for your overall health and longevity, and I'm Dr. Sophie Hale. Alright, second bacteria I want to talk about, called Lactobacillus plantarum, Plantarum. Now this is a probiotic as well. It's a member of a large family of beneficial bacteria called lactobacilli. In fact, it's one of the best-known healthy bacteria strains. You can almost certainly find Lactobacillus plantarum in your whole yogurt. Now there are a lot of different types of lactobacillus, and all of them have their own kind of superpowers for your gut and your health. But specifically, Lactobacillus plantarum has been shown to have some very specific benefits. Number 1, it supports the gut environment. And by the way, when you have it as a probiotic, it will survive stomach acid. You eat it, it will make it all the way past your digestive enzymes into your lower gut, where it does its job. Now this is where things get exciting, because Lactobacillus plantarum has been shown to produce a substance that was discovered called plantaricin. Plantaricin is a natural antibiotic that can modify and help shape the makeup of your gut bacteria. So this probiotic produces an antibacterial that shapeshifts your gut bacteria, and the overall neighborhood becomes healthier. Where else do you get Lactobacillus plantarum besides yogurt? You can often find it in fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented olives, which is a traditional Greek way of preparing olives to eat. But this video is about probiotics, so I want to tell you about a specific strain of plantarum called PS128, Lactobacillus plantarum PS128. Because this specific strain, as a probiotic, has been studied and shown to have beneficial effects on brain health, which I think is really remarkable. So clinical studies were done by researchers where PS128 was given to people who had Parkinson's disease. And what was really striking is that those patients with Parkinson's who took PS128 showed clinical improvements in their Parkinson's symptoms. Now, for people with Parkinson's, you know the symptoms are one of the worst and most uncomfortable things to actually have, and there are times when you don't have any other treatment options for it. Turns out the gut microbiome can actually have a beneficial effect. What kind of effect? Better movement speed, less muscle stiffness, better coordination, and by the way, also improved sleep, which is a significant problem in people with Parkinson's. And better overall quality of life. These are meaningful outcomes. One probiotic, PS128, can actually do this in a clinical study. That to me is noteworthy, and it basically also tells you the gut-brain connection is something real and important. So if you're like me, you're going to ask, alright, that's interesting, Lactobacillus plantarum PS128 seems to have a benefit. How does it work? We're still trying to figure this out. What we think PS128 does is that it improves the dopamine pathways, which is the reward pathway, but also the movement pathways in the brain, and it lowers brain inflammation at the same time. More dopamine, which is what you need for Parkinson's, and less inflammation, which you want to have anyway. And we also think that Lactobacillus plantarum activates the vagus nerve, which is one of the largest nerves in your body, and connects your brain to your gut. We know that this is one of the telephone cables where your gut bacteria sends text messages up to your brain, so we think that this probiotic PS128 has beneficial effects that go way beyond digestive benefits and general gut health, but specifically can have an effect on brain health. This is targeted biology. We're still understanding the targets, but I think it's really exciting. So here's a common bacteria you can get as a probiotic that's been studied to improve brain health. Third bacteria, probiotic, Lactobacillus reuteri. This is another member of the Lactobacillus family. I have done research on Lactobacillus reuteri myself, and it's commonly found in the human gut microbiome. But once antibiotics were developed, it actually started to become less common. Also, changes in the modern diet, and this is a bacteria that we actually need, but it's becoming less and less present in us. So targeted probiotics mean that we can actually restore this particular microbe that we might not have enough of. Good news is that you can find Lactobacillus reuteri in your food, okay? Not in huge quantities, but you can find it in your food. Food is medicine. Which ones? You might be surprised. Fermented foods like yogurt sometimes will have it. Sourdough made with Lactobacillus reuteri. And by the way, some traditionally aged cheeses, like Parmigiano Reggiano, will also have some Lactobacillus reuteri. Now these are pretty broad dietary sources, but they will also have other things in them like sodium, things you want to watch out for. So diet is not always the best, and it's certainly not the only way, and you can get it as a probiotic, which is what we're talking about here. So I have studied this bacteria, Lactobacillus reuteri, in the lab with colleagues at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the research has shown that reuteri can improve wound healing, so it heals you from the inside out. And the research also shows it improves the appearance of your skin. You have more glowing skin, you get better metabolism, better glucose utilization, less inflammation, stronger immunity. It can also help with brain signaling, helping the brain produce the social hormone oxytocin. And by the way, reuteri is also good for gum health. Now, gum health. Your teeth sit in your gums. Gum health is not only important for dental health, but it turns out we have now realized that when your gum health is bad, it's actually linked to heart disease and brain disease as well. Neurodegeneration. So good gut means starting in your mouth. Good gums mean good heart and good brain. Really, really important. So you don't want to have gingivitis, which is inflammation in the gums, and Lactobacillus reuteri can lower gum inflammation and improve overall gum health. In fact, randomized controlled clinical trials conducted in Europe and around the world show that Lactobacillus reuteri is actually a good targeted probiotic for lowering gum inflammation, for improving plaque on your teeth, and reducing bleeding from the gums in people who have gingivitis. So how does this work? Well, remember I told you about Lactobacillus plantarum producing an antibiotic? Well, guess what? Lactobacillus reuteri does the same thing. It produces its own natural antibiotic called reuterin. Amazing, right? Bacteria produce an antibacterial. What that does is the good bacteria produces the antibiotic that suppresses the harmful bacteria on your gums, and it allows your body to rebuild a healthier ecosystem. Sounds pretty complicated, but really quite remarkable as well. Okay, so the next time you hear somebody talking about probiotics, you know the question to ask. What specific bacteria are you talking about, right? Some bacteria can influence your immune system and how it responds. Some can influence your metabolism. And some can even influence how your brain functions, and that is the concept of targeted probiotics. It's not just a shotgun. Good for your digestion. We're really beginning to take a look at specific bacteria with specific clinical outcomes. It's kind of how we do drug development, but we're now using healthy bacteria in that analysis. There is still a lot more to learn. There's emerging data on Akkermansia, Lactobacillus plantarum, and Lactobacillus reuteri. I have not told you everything, because we don't know everything yet. But I've given you enough clues about these three bacteria that you can get as probiotics to give you a real head start when it comes to thinking about what kind of probiotics you might want to consider. Now, if you want to stay ahead of the science and learn about how to use food, the microbiome, and healthy bacteria like probiotics to support your health, make sure you subscribe. I will keep bringing you the latest evidence and show you how it applies to your everyday health. See you in the next one.